So that only took me 30 seconds to do, so now all I got to do is pull off the distributor cap and we'll see if our timing is correct. I've noticed the distributor rotor is pointing right at this arrow that I've painted white to make it easier to see, and that indicates if you're at top dead center, number one, and that distributor pointer is right on this arrow. This one has a number 6 because this is a distributor for a 6-cylinder engine. Yours may have an 8 on it. If those are lined up at top dead center compression stroke on number 1, your timing is good, because you cannot adjust the distributors on this model. Even though there is a distributor on this model here, you cannot rotate it to adjust the timing. The timing is not adjustable. So if these are not lining up perfectly, then you have jumped a tooth either on the cam and or the crankshaft. As unlikely as that is, it's more likely that the distributor wasn't installed right after some other repair or something. There is a ton of misinformation on installing a distributor on these vehicles, and I think what I'm going to do is maybe make another video on how to install a distributor properly on these vehicles, so that if that is your situation, you will be able to fix this correctly. That is not the case in this car. The timing is correct, so we are going to go after fuel for sure next. All right, at this point we're going to do some fuel pressure testing. Again, because the injection system in this car is not very easy to diagnose. Prior to digging in and spending about 45 minutes to remove the plenum, I want to do some quick tests to first verify that this problem is going to be with the injector system under the plenum. Wouldn't I feel stupid if it turns out that this is a wiring problem to the injector well outside of the injector system and I tore in there for nothing? So that's what I want to do. Again, always the easiest possibilities first and save the more troublesome and involved things for later. So the first thing I want to do is just do a little test on the fuel pressure here. One of the things that maybe could cause this, maybe there's an internal leak at injector number 5 in the system. So I'm going to hook up this fuel pressure gauge. I actually have it hooked up to the Schrader valve on the fuel line, and I'm just going to turn the car to on. I'm not going to start it, and just see if it holds the pressure. And if it doesn't hold the pressure, I'm going to start thinking that this is good evidence. I really need to get in there and check for an internal fuel leak at that injector. So let's go ahead and turn on this fuel pump and see what we get. Okay, because the fuel gauge was empty, of course I wanted to run the pump a couple times, and it looks like we're at about 35 PSI. That sounds really low, actually, for this car. I don't know what the spec is, but I was expecting somewhere more around 50, but maybe this is right. But what's more important to me is it does not look like I'm getting any kind of drop. That doesn't seem to be the case here. It's holding pretty steady. So the next thing I want to do is, again, simplest first. I want to make sure that there is power getting to that injector, that the computer is indeed telling number 5 to fire, and let's see if we can test for that. So what I'm going to do is put a little light bulb here, like a Noid light, into the harness for the fuel injection system where the number 5 injector would fire, and that's going to be these two terminals here. So we're just going to hook up a light there, and I'm going to turn the engine over, reconnect the battery first. Before you do any procedures, you always disconnect the battery unless you absolutely need that battery connected, just to make sure you don't short circuit anything, or especially dealing with the fuel system cause sparks. So let me go ahead and turn this over after I reconnect the battery, and we will see if it lights up and flashes. All right, so the light did flash, so that is 100% confirmation that we will need to dig in further and take this plenum off and examine the spider injector. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the battery, and we'll start getting to this. So this is the infamous spider injector system. Actually, I guess this is more of an insect injector since it's a 6-cylinder. But basically, this looks like an aftermarket system, actually, because I haven't seen one of these before, but from what I've researched on it, it's pretty clear that there's not these electrical connectors on the GM version of this. So I do believe this is an aftermarket one. And actually, it's going to make it easier to diagnose. But you just pull out the injectors from the intake, and then you'll need a pair of screwdrivers to pry the whole system up, and the whole system will come out just like a big spider. But actually, I just had an idea that I'm going to try to go ahead and verify that this is the number 5 injector here, that there's no fuel coming out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and try this idea real quick. So here's my brilliant master plan that I'm going to try. I've got this little tackle box thing that happens to have 6 separate sections in it, and I fed each of the poppets into one of the sections. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the engine over now that I've got this thing connected back up to fuel and power, and verify that there's no fuel from the number 5 injector, and that would be a pretty satisfactory indication. We already know that there's signal to the injector from the light test that we did earlier, so this would really cinch that we need to pull the spider injector and take a closer look at it. Now, I'm only going to turn the engine just a little bit over, but this is going to be an open fuel system, so I'm probably not going to film this. I want to get the lights and everything out of the way. I also want to make sure there's no possibility of sparks, so I'm going to disconnect any coil associated things and make sure that this is very painless. But again, there's only going to be like half a mil of fuel total from this test, so not too worried about it. But remember, it's the vapors, not the liquid, that causes fires here, so we want to get anything electrical out of the field of the vapors. So we'll go ahead and do this and see what happens. All right, so my little balance test didn't exactly give the result I was hoping for. It turns out, we'll see if you can see this, all of my 6 little containers in here have about the same amount of fuel in them. I'm not trying to do a total balance test. I was just expecting that number 5 would have no fuel, of course, and it does. So that's okay. Logic will still prevail. This is still a fuel problem. It's just an intermittent fuel problem. And here's how I know that. First of all, again, the customer did say that the vehicle was working fine on the way up here, so that indicates an intermittent. The other thing is looking back at the possible causes: fuel, spark, timing, compression. Compression is not going to be intermittent. We can rule that out. We know the timing is not going to be an intermittent problem. We've validated that the timing is good. So that leaves spark and fuel, both of which can indeed be intermittent. But I'm pretty confident that I've ruled out spark, but I am not confident I've ruled out fuel because I haven't really inspected that injector system yet. So I know that rational thought hasn't conclusively shown the result so far, but it will. This is going to show to be a fuel problem. I'm very confident of that. If it's not, then this video will probably never make it to YouTube. So we need to get that fuel injector system out of there and see if we can find evidence of an explanation for why there's fuel in my bucket here, but obviously it wasn't happening when the thing was in the car. So let's go ahead and get that checked out. Here's our injector system, and this is the number 5. This is the one that I'm suspecting there to be a problem. I've checked over the wiring. I didn't think I saw anything obvious, but we're going to find some type of short or open in this particular injector system. So I've unplugged the electrical connector from the injector, and my probe meter is too big to fit in there, so what I'm going to do is use a sewing needle to probe into one of these wires, and then in the body of the injector here there's 6 pairs of terminals that of course correspond to the respective injector wires. So I'm going to connect one of my continuity meter ends to the wire there, and I'm going to just test my meter real quick, and we see we've got continuity, so that's good. And then I'm going to look and see which of these wires is going to be the one that is connected. And when I touch this wire here, I've got continuity. And when I touch the other terminal, well, I also have continuity. So this is great. This actually indicates a short circuit condition. So this is awesome. This solves the problem. And actually, I want to see if I can create an intermittent by maybe moving this injector around a little bit here. And let's try it now. Here's one terminal. See if you can see that. Am I in your way? Okay, and now there's no continuity. And then when I touch the other terminal. There is continuity. So this is the correct reading that I should get, but I'm able to, let's get on that one without continuity. If I move this wire around a little bit, let's see if I can get it. There. I've got continuity again. So clearly there is a short circuit condition with this injector. And just to verify, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this injector off of my known good poppet, feed in our probe. Just test real quick. And you see we've got the continuity there. So on this one, I'm going to test one, and that one is open. So this other one's going to give continuity. And there's our continuity. And I guarantee you, no matter how much I wiggle this thing around, I'm not going to get a short condition. So this is 100% confirmation, short circuit, intermittent in the number 5 injector. One of the problems with these spider systems, they are not serviceable. So if one of these injectors is shorted up here, then you can't just replace one component from this system. So I'm going to have to get a new spider system, and that is going to fix this vehicle. I want to give a really quick update to finish the video. I changed out the spider injector, and the car runs way better, and the scan tool shows no misfires. So as far as the misfire problem, this car is fixed. But when I test drove the car, it seemed to me that it was really slow and hesitating on the acceleration, and according to my friend, he's like, well, it's always done that. I guess he's just used to it. I am not. So I still think there is something wrong with this car. And if you remember, when I was looking at the fuel pressure and I thought it looked a little low, well, it turns out that that was true. It was much lower than spec. I think the spec was like 55 psi, and I believe it was only reading, what was it, 35. So it does seem there's a very low fuel pressure, and that would totally explain some of the drivability issues that I experienced, at least. So I think what we'll do is we'll call this car fixed as far as the misfire, but I'm going to make another video and check into this performance problem, which appears to be from low fuel pressure, and maybe that'll be interesting. So if you had a misfire, I hope that this helped you to get back on the road, and maybe we'll see you on the next video. And if you've got a other fuel pressure problem with your car that you found, then hopefully this next video will help with that too. So maybe we'll see you. Thank you. Take care. I hope this helped. Bye.